We got a friend on the scene down in D.C. to talk about what's going on there. And also, like me, he's a former intelligence community guy. So much to dig into now with this proposed domestic terrorism law and all the rhetoric we're hearing from this Biden team. Jack Posobiec is with us now. He's a correspondent for One American News, a former naval intelligence officer. Jack, great to have you back.
Hey, Buck, thanks for having me on, calling in live from the Green Zone here in Washington, D.C.
Tell me about it. What's it look like? I mean, everything seemed okay yesterday, although it looked like they were preparing for an invasion from, China or North Korea or something.
Look, I got to tell you, there are enough troops, trucks, and general military equipment in this town right now to repel an invasion from a near-peer state power. I've never seen anything like this. I've been living in D.C. almost 10 years. In any response to anything that's happened, and we have had attacks here. We've had protests. We've had riots all last summer. We had police attacked, assaulted, etc. Places burned down. We had mobs literally running through the streets of D.C. and Georgetown, going up to people. You never saw this up. The White House was attacked at one point over the summer. They didn't even put a Humvee in front of it.
Wow. And what's the reason for this continued heavy presence after the inauguration?
I've been in briefings both on the record and off the record with PAOs from the National Guard and other servicemen that I know. They keep telling me that there are no credible active threats to Washington at this time. Is there chatter on social media? You bet. It's social media. That's what you'll find there every single day of the week. But you're not finding anything that rises to the level of a specific delineated threat to the Capitol, to the inauguration, to Joe Biden, to Washington, or the Capitol building itself. It's just not there. Most of the time you see people, they're walking around. In some cases, they're armed. In some cases, what we saw yesterday that was significant, I think, was foot patrols, massive amounts of foot patrols surrounding D.C., throughout the Capitol region, throughout the National Mall, 40 soldiers, 50 soldiers at a time, just marching around unarmed, yet really conducting those presence operations, kind of giving everyone, I guess, some sense of that it is on lockdown. But as far as providing actual prevention to an attack, I'm not sure if there was anything that was going on.
Speaking of Jack Posobiec, he's correspondent for One American News Network and a former naval intelligence officer. Jack, you've had 135 civil rights organizations, according to Fox News, signing an open letter to Congress yesterday urging them not to expand terrorism-related authorities. And the letter was signed on behalf of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. And they say that there should not, essentially, there's already plenty of laws in the books about terrorism. Why would we be expanding it? What's the purpose of it? I think we should all see this as troubling, because even in Joe Biden's speech, he is targeting individuals and groups on the right with a very broad brush. And we're hearing that they're going to mobilize state, local, federal, you name it, even DOD resources against this insurgency threat, as John Brennan, the ex-CIA director, calls it. That to me, that all sounds really kind of menacing.
Look, I spent time in the ICB. You spent time in the IC. We know the types of tools that were used to wage the global war on terror. We know the reach and the power of the NSA, our SIGINT capabilities, our comment capabilities, everything that can be done through that. We call it the magic box at Fort Meade, with everything that they can look into around the world. Those tools were not designed to be used on the domestic American populace. They were not designed to be used for American citizens. And what they're attempting to do is to widen the aperture of the authorities and allowances for those tools so that they can be turned it seems ever so slightly. But you and I know, Buck, that the minute you start widening this net, you are going to be catching a lot of people that are not involved in any type of extremism, certainly not involved in any type of terrorism or any active threats. And you're noticing this with even the same words when you're talking about the National Guard. And I love the troops, there's no question about that, but we're talking about authorities here, from the political leaders. When they start saying, well, we're concerned, we have concerns, and that we're going to start using flags. And what my reporting has shown out is that they're going through the National Guard soldiers, and when they're talking about this vetting process, these are the early stages of it. where when they're vetting someone, that means they're going to your social media, to your Facebook, to your TikTok, to your Twitter, whatever you have up, and they're looking for what they call indicators or flags. Well, what are some of the things that Army CID or FBI, Navy NCIS is starting to get this directive now too? They're looking at, do you like the NRA? Do you have a picture of the Gadsden flag? Don't tread on me. Have you liked Turning Point USA? The Patriot Riders, which go out for military funerals. These are all different types of things that they're looking for as just potential indicators for extremism. MAGA hats, Keep America Great hats. These are all endemic of the political opposition to the current administration. And so you've got a situation now where it's really one step removed from almost declaring your opposition to all be extremists. And I think that that's what you were just mentioning that Biden talked about in his speech yesterday.
Yes, and they're certainly not going to be particularly discerning if it's something that allows them to chill the political opposition speech to them as well, right? You don't have to lock up everybody, Jack, as you and I well know. You only have to pick a few targets here and there with these expanded authorities, and everybody else gets the message. We see that with these social media suppression campaigns, and I think we're going to see that with some of the way they try to apply the law here in any kind of expanded authority sense, which is what they're talking about. But I also want to ask you, as a correspondent for One America News, the calls for including some of your fellow journalists out there, or fellow media people, to stop carriage of One America, to stop carriage of Newsmax and Fox News along with it, by the way. This I have not. I mean, I'm not surprised by it, but have you seen this before? It feels like they believe with the new Biden administration, this is within their sights now to just deplatform not only their political, but also their commercial rivals.
Right. Once again, you've got a situation where it's yet another tactic where any dissent, any opinion that doesn't agree with them, not only, I grew up in the 90s, right? We're around the same age. I remember that we used to always say, if you don't like what you're listening to, turn the channel, right? That was sort of the Howard Stern standard. Turn the channel. You have to listen to it. But now we're told that no, freedom of speech has to be a positive, right? They call it positive freedom, meaning that you have to take away the speech that you don't like, that you disagree with. This, again, is going to lead to a chilling effect in American political discourse, and you're already seeing that now today, where people are taking down pictures on their social media. They're making sure to be very quiet around the workplace so they don't say anything that makes anyone think that it could trip their sensibilities. If taking off Trump bumper stickers, you are getting to a situation where what you are essentially doing is that you're ending any meaningful opposition to the left in America.
Speaking of Jack Posobiec, One America News correspondent and former naval intelligence officer, and Jack, I want to know what you think about the fact that we saw violence yesterday in America from leftists, unsurprisingly, attacking cops and buildings, including even the headquarters of the DNC in Portland. There was also a dust up in Denver. So we had a couple of places where there were effectively riots, and the one in Portland really targeted immigrations and customs enforcement offices. But isn't it? Well, I want your take, actually. Just tell me, what do you think is the message that Americans should take from the fact that you're there in the so-called green zone in D.C. with 30,000 troops or so deployed for a quiet and peaceful day in D.C., and it's actually leftists out in Portland who are trying to burn things down and intimidate federal officers?
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing that, if Joe Biden and John Brennan and all the rest of these guys want to actually do something about domestic terrorism and insurrectionist groups, boy, I've got a whole list for you of groups, starting with Portland. Then we go to Seattle. We go to the people that were perpetrating Chaz that have still to this day not been arrested and locked up. Actually, they got one of them in Tallahassee, Florida, because he had traveled up to Chaz. He's calls himself a YPG sniper because he went over to Syria and did training. These individuals, and I made an entire documentary about this. You can go to antifamovie.com and watch it. I brought in people from the left. I brought in people from conservatives. I brought in Black Lives Matter people who all said that this group, Antifa, what they do, they are insurrectionists, they are agitators, they are inciters. They want violent overthrow of the U.S. system. They are not Republicans. They are not Democrats. They want to overthrow our system, the entire status quo. So no, of course, they are not supporters of Joe Biden in the same way that they were not supporters of Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. They represent something far, far outside the political mainstream. And this is key, they are taking direct action in the streets to achieve it.
Jack, what is the benefit that the Democrats and the left-wing media, the Democrat-aligned media, get from ignoring and downplaying Antifa, even when they're attacking, say, the DNC headquarters in Portland? If you flip on CNN right now, very unlikely you'll see the footage that I've seen from people like Andy Ngo, and I know you've got your excellent documentary that people can watch for an in-depth. Very unlikely they'll see the black-clad lunatics of Antifa just yesterday on those channels. Why is that?
Well, the reason is twofold. Number one, because they only want to portray one side as being negative, and that, of course, being conservatives, being Trump supporters, right? But they'll take groups like Proud Boys or Oath Keepers and then use that to paint with a broad brush across anyone who just happened to vote for the guy for office, right? And which is obviously not fair. But at the same time, they want to keep these groups like Antifa around because they know that for 90% of the time, Antifa's targets will be the same political opponents of the left. They will be Donald Trump. They will be Trump supporters. They will be conservatives. And they know that Antifa has no holds barred. They will go to your home. They will go to your place of business. They will go after you on social media, right? They will go and do the things that the Democrats can't. And of course, with a wink and a nod, they'll disavow everything, but they'll never take meaningful action against us. You know, we're going through and identifying everybody that was at the Capitol riot, that went in. They're using facial recognition. They're asking for tips. And look, if people broke the law, they broke the law, and we should do that. But why isn't that same standard being applied to these groups that have been doing this night after night in Portland and Seattle and across the country?
Jack, before we let you go, and I know you got to get back to reporting on what's happening right there in D.C. because you're in the middle of all the security precautions. What are your biggest concerns and primary observations about this now Biden national security team that he's surrounding himself with? Some of them are about to be appointed. Others are already in place.
Look, he talks about unity and he talks about healing, and yet he surrounds himself with people that are looking to do the exact opposite of that. And so I think it is distorting his message. You know, I'm going to take Joe Biden at his word. When he says he wants unity. But why are you putting people around you, sir? Why are you putting people around you that are seeking to ask for unity under submission?
Very good question. One that I think we're going to find out, unfortunately, the hard way in the weeks ahead. But Jack, keep your head on a swivel, my friend. Stay safe and come back and join us soon, all right?
Appreciate it, Buck. They have to get you down here sometime.
Absolutely. Jack Posobiec, One America News, everybody. Should be following his work and check him out.
So if President Biden wants a theme of his presidency to be unifying the country, does he think that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer should drop a potentially divisive Senate impeachment trial?
Well, he spoke today, as you all saw, about unity in his inaugural address and the importance of unity in bringing the country together, and the resolve of the American people in helping to get through this moment. You know, we are confident, though, that just like the American people can, the Senate can also multitask, and they can do their constitutional duty while continuing to conduct the business of the American people.
A real question. Of course, it comes from the new White House correspondent for Fox News, Peter Doocy. A real question and a new question. How can you be calling for unity? Let's think this one through for a second. How can they be calling for unity on the one hand, but on the other hand, they are telling us that there should be a post-presidency impeachment of Donald Trump? Now, let me just say, this would be disastrous. Now that Biden is in office and everybody can, there wasn't some insurrection on Inauguration Day and everything, that was all hype and craziness and everything's okay, everyone can calm down. Now that that's the case, can we also calm down about the fact the president didn't incite an insurrection? He lost the election. It's over. Biden's in power now. What's the point of allowing this spiteful, after the fact, clearly partisan punishment? And why would the GOP go along with it, then therefore making it a bipartisan punishment? What's the point? We all know what it is. See, this is the problem. The public is aware of this. They will tell us it is because of our sacred democracy. They will tell us, these politicians, it's because whatever we have to do here to, put America back on the track of truth, honesty, justice in the American way, whatever, right? A lot of rhetoric, a lot of boilerplate phrases about this. That's what they'll say. What's the reality, though? What's really happening here with this? It's that they want to prevent Trump from running for office again. Because there are obviously all of the Democrats and a pretty healthy contingent of Republicans, including Republicans who were supportive of Trump once he came into office because it was good for their careers. They want to stop him from running again. Now, if what he did was so awful and so heinous that it would even require the removal after, I should say the impeachment after leaving office and the barring from future office, if what he did requires that, or I should get that based on the merits, why would they be so concerned about him running again in the first place? Wouldn't he be rejected by the American electorate? Wouldn't the Republican Party say no? Remember, there are a lot of people who have careers and money and a lot of things riding on not only who the president is, but who is the leader of the GOP. I mean the de facto leader, the most powerful person in it. A lot of media personalities, a lot of news network, and certainly consultants and advisors. And there's a whole groups out there of people who really benefit based upon who the head of the GOP is. And the McConnell faction, the more old guard GOP style group, does not want Donald Trump to even have the option of coming back because they worry about two things. One, that he will use that to maintain a real control over the party going forward. And two, that he could actually end up winning in a primary again, which is what would have to happen. He'd have to go through the primary and he would win again. Now, let me just say this. It's disastrous for the GOP to do this no matter what they tell you, because the base will feel like this was unnecessary, vindictive, unjustified. And so that's why Democrats wanted to. It's nothing but a pure win for Democrats. They get safety from Donald Trump running for office ever again, and they get a kind of political civil war within the GOP. Why give them that victory on top of the victory they've had in this last election and the Georgia Senate races? I don't think so.
The thing that was, to me, so striking about today was that kind of comforting sense, even with the masks, even with the distancing, even without the crowd, those shots inside Statuary Hall that we're familiar with, from every inauguration, the sight of the Clintons and the Bushes and the Obamas, the Avengers, sort of the Marvel superheroes back up there together, all in one place, well, with their friend Joe Biden, all of them, I think, feeling like that all of them sharing that same view that a lot of Americans had, which is that, we did narrowly avert catastrophe in America, and that they were all there to kind of to buttress their buddy Joe Biden and see him in some ways as the natural and necessary corrective to what's been going on.
The Avengers. That's right. Former presidents are like the Avengers. Look, I do think that this is a principle that got a little bit overshadowed for some during the Trump era. But politicians are just people doing a job. And we know that. I think that we can go back to that universal understanding on the right now. I think we should be there. I think that most of us understood that about Trump. And I remember even some of the most ardent early supporters of Trump that I know would refer to him as essentially the vessel. the tool. He was the hammer to deal with the nail, right? He was the drainer of the swamp. It's not that everything he did was perfect or that he was superhuman, but we do want to move away and should always be away from thinking of politicians as more than just people we've given some authority to get a job done. They are not the Avengers. They are not superheroes. They are just like you and me. In fact, they're generally a little slimier, less ethical, and honestly, let's be real, less intelligent than you and me. But that's where we are. So that's all being thrown out, that basic understanding of the role that politics and politicians specifically should play in American life, that is being abandoned right now by all these Democrats who are such enormous fans, these journos who love Biden. Oh, they love Biden so much. And I think we should all be very clear, very aware of what those implications will be going forward. This is not going to change. And they're going to continue to be very nasty about the Trump administration, for sure. I mean, if you're looking for like just a vicious, just gross little swamp-tastic journo, tough to do better. Someone said recently that I kind of remind them of Michael Scott from The Office, and his feelings about Toby is how I feel in the world of media about Tapper. I think that's pretty accurate. I think he may be the Toby to my Michael Scott. I don't even know the guy. I've only interacted with him a couple times. I just know he's the worst. He's just the worst. And here he is with a really magnanimous comment about the outgoing administration. Play 12.
Well, America, meet your new first family. The Bidens are walking into the House now, the White House, where the President and First Lady will make their new home. And for anybody out there wondering, yes, there has been a deep clean of the building, given the fact that the previous occupants did not take coronavirus particularly seriously. So do not worry about that.
There is no evidence that he could point to that is true. And there's also very limited evidence at best that cleaning surfaces prevents the transmission of coronavirus, just to be very clear about that. There's a lot that they don't know, but they run around pretending like they have all these answers. But just a gross thing to say from, again, he is Toby from The Office, just the worst. And then there are other people that you have to wonder why they don't understand how silly and sad their reaction to all this may be. Stephen Colbert, he's supposed to be a comedian. I mean, say what you will about Jay Leno. I never thought that, Mark, who's the other guy? Not Leno. You know the other one. Yes.
Dave Letterman.
Yeah, thank you. I never thought Letterman was funny. I just always thought this guy, I didn't get it. I thought it was all just smoke and mirrors around him, and the channel and the media apparatus around him just kind of propped him up, and he's all these writers. I never found this guy funny. He seemed like a jerk a lot of the time, actually, trying really hard to be funny. And people who work for him, he had a terrible reputation just in the business, horrible reputation. And never mind the stuff that came out about him and what he did to the guy's wife who was married, and then the blackmail and the whole, a mess, a total mess. Jay Leno, I don't think is super funny, but like I was a kid when I would watch Jay Leno. I would stay up late, which I learned now is a bad idea. I should go to bed by 11 o'clock every night. I wish I'd known this when I was younger or understood this, but it's so much better for your life. But anyway, I used to stay up, late when I was a kid, after my mom would put me in bed or whatever. I'd try to go turn on the TV and watch some Jay Leno. And I'll say this about the guy. He was trying to make people laugh. He was like, I'm doing showbiz. I'm making jokes. Everybody can laugh at them. I'm not punching down. We have totally lost that with these late night comedians. That's gone. These people are political pundits who have jokes written for them now. And they're not very smart political pundits. They don't know very much, but they have big audiences because they have these legacy media institutions that prop them up. I mean, Stephen Colbert was kind of funny when he was essentially doing his, what was the name of that? The Colbert Report. Right, the Colbert Report. He was kind of funny when he was doing that. But that was, of course, making fun of the right. I think it was loosely based off of Bill O'Reilly. And now he's got this big slot And his show is recorded. There's live audiences. It's not far from where I live, so I often pass it in New York City, where the Colbert whatever studio is. And this is what he said about Joe Biden's victory. Play 14.
Well, you did it. You survived the last 4 years, and your reward, a shiny new old president. Good old Joe. Because today at 11:49 a.m., Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. was sworn in as the 46th president of the United States. We watched it. Evie's here. We watched it together. The inauguration was a joyful occasion. Like I do at most happy things, I cried a lot. It's true. It was extremely emotional. And not entirely in the way that I expected, because I have to tell you, I have zero gloat in me. There is no end zone dance here. What I feel is enormous relief.
Yeah. An adult should not cry with joy at the election of the most old school establishment machine politician you could possibly find. Okay, there's nothing new or interesting or exciting or revolutionary or anything about this guy. But even if there were, you don't cry with joy unless it's your family, right? I mean, if you're, and I'll give, Joe Biden can cry. Oh my gosh, you didn't call her doctor. I know. What a evil person I am. But to cry because your politician is now in office as an adult, especially one who works in the media and is around celebrities all the time and should have a bit more of an act as if you've been there before attitude, just goes to show you, I mean, these people are, they're really devoted to this. I mean, there's something a little bit sad. They convinced themselves that Donald Trump was the monster that they kept saying on TV. They convinced themselves that Donald Trump was a threat to our democracy, that he was going to destroy the republic. Otherwise, you can't explain why somebody would cry like this, or why he would say that he cried. And he sounded serious to me, and he does this all the time. I mean, he does political commentary and then throws a couple of jokes in, which is really not the way that would not be my preference. But it's sad. It's sad that people get this attached to a politician, especially people who are supposed to be dealing with the news and dealing with commentary on a regular basis. But it has been the 4 years we have been through, the amount of hate that has been piled on top of Trump and, yes, his voters is like nothing else we've ever seen. There's never been something quite like this before. And how that plays out is really anybody's guess at this point. I just think that you're going to see a lot of people who show you that even though Trump is gone, they've now emotionalized and internalized politics in a way that is unhealthy. That's an easy way of putting it. A lot of executive orders on day one from Biden, not wasting any time trying to erase some things that Trump did. But there's one that didn't get nearly the same amount of attention, at least not in the opening hours of the Biden presidency as many others. But it's a reminder of what kind of an administration we're going to see here and what sorts of decisions it will make in order to placate the left. There's an executive order now on preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender identity and sexual sexual orientation. Now, that sounds good, right? No one wants discrimination. No one advocates for discrimination, and we should all treat each other with respect and dignity always. But what this actually means, let's be very clear about this. The way this executive order is to be enforced is now any educational institution that actually gets money from the federal government is going to have, they are not allowed to discriminate on the basis of gender identity. This now means a 200-pound, 6-foot-tall male who wants to play on the women's field hockey team is by federal order mandated to be able to do so. This also means that women's teams must be open to it, as well as women's scholarships for sport. So now you can have individuals who are transgender women who decide that they want to, and this has happened. This is no longer theoretical. This is no longer a question of, oh, you're taking us down a slippery slope. There have been cases brought already. You have track and field stars on the women's side who are biologically male. Now, I know, we talk a lot about brainwashing, and we talk a lot about how, oh, the Trump cult, the media says all this stuff. Who's really brainwashed? The side that says any person can observe clearly and obviously that males overwhelmingly have a physical advantage in strength, size, and speed over females, and there is a reason for separation based upon gender in athletic competition, in bathroom usage, and a whole bunch of things. Anyone can observe this. And, I love it when the stupid libs come after me for this, as they have in the past, when I've said, they say, oh, well, Ronda Rousey would be able to, kick your butt or whatever. And I'm kind of like, okay, you think maybe one of the greatest female MMA fighters of all time might be able to, in a bare knuckle fight, and a lot of you are like, she'd beat you, but that's not the point. Might be able to take a guy that has to sit in a desk hours and hours a day doing a radio show in a fight. And there's like, you're using that as the point of comparison. The greatest female fighter perhaps of the last 20 years against some dude who, is eating too many donuts these days during quarantine. I don't think you're making the case, libs. You think you are. Because yeah, I was a college athlete. I know other people are college athletes too. They'll tell you the male, female, and this is in no way disparaging female athletics or sport. But I mean, if you were, and I'm pretty sure, here's an example of this. The women's national soccer team, I know a lot of you don't care about soccer. The women's national soccer team is the best, one of the best in the world. American women's national soccer team is one of the best in the world. I think it's generally considered the number one or number two team. And they scrimmaged, not long ago, they scrimmaged the men's, Olympic development. I think it was 16 and under team. So basically 16 and 7, maybe 16 and 15-year-olds. And they got crushed. Absolutely crushed. So that's the best women's team of adults in the world playing against the U.S., under 16 and under team. So just to give you a sense, that's male, and there were men, right? Male-female disparity in athletics. We all know it's there. Why do liberals insist that we cannot observe what is apparent and make decisions based upon what is true? This is one of these examples. And you could say, oh, but it doesn't really matter. Really, if you had trained your whole life to be in track and field as a woman, and you set a state record in high school, would it bother you if you had all those early mornings, all that blood, sweat, and tears to be number one, in the high jump, or number one in the 100-meter dash, and then some guy who used to be called Phil comes along and now wants to be called Philomena and says that he's a female and was running in this race and sets the state record. Does that sit well with you if you're that woman, or if you're that coach, or if you're that team that had set that record? Is that fair? And this is happening. This is not theoretical. There are already cases that have been brought about this. We all can see this. All right. An average athletic, a male of average athletic ability is going to be bigger, stronger, and faster than 80 to 90% of the women that he comes across in the same sport. Again, it has to be average athletic ability, all right? I'm just telling you, that's where this is. We can all see it. But people get angry about this. It's about equality. No, it's not. It's actually discriminating against women is what it's doing. This is actually harming women in the name of equality for all the sexes. That's what they're doing. They can't win on this argument, so what do? But see, transgenderism in general now has become the tip of the spear for the socially progressive left. This is the forefront of their civil rights movement, and so they've decided that whatever they have to do, however they can push this downfield, they'll do it. So yeah, now you're gonna have, once again, under federal law, if you want to be, and this has happened, if you want to be a transgender MMA fighter, so now you're really harming. I mean, now you're really, putting people in danger because of the male-female disparity, which this has happened already before. Fallon Fox was the name of the fighter, transgender female. You're going to be able to sue and now fight, and you be an MMA champion. This is what the Biden, this is the science crowd. This is the, we believe the data people. Yeah, sure they do. I mean, this is crazy. Welcome to the Biden administration.